Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Kika and today we are going to talk about creative self-portrait photography and how you can take beautiful selfies. Let's get to it. For this video I decided to split it up into two parts. So the first part we're going to talk about how you can come up with ideas and concepts for your creative self-portraits. And the second part is going to be more practical advice on how to place your camera and posing and how you can look beautiful in your creative selfies. Alright, are you ready for part number one? Part number one. Well, there's only two parts, but part number one. So we're going to talk about how you can come up with ideas and concepts for your creative self-portraits. To me, creative self-portraits really mean that you can express a side of yourself that maybe you wouldn't dare to do in a regular selfie. It's quite normal to get kind of self-conscious and also a bit awkward about being in front of the camera. At least I definitely feel that often. So I think doing a creative self-portrait is a way to take away some of that discomfort, because you get to express maybe a hidden side of yourself and a side of your personality that you wouldn't normally get to express in a normal selfie, if that makes sense. I think creative self-portraits are all about storytelling, so ways you can find to go beyond that conventional photo and regular selfie is what it's all about. So the first one is to think of an emotion. So instead of immediately trying to figure out what exactly the photo will be, starting with an emotion and maybe trying to find that mood and atmosphere that you would like to have in your photo can be a great way to start building on. Stories are all about communication and, telling something to the person who's looking at it, and emotion is such a strong way, and again that allows you to maybe express something of your personality that you maybe in a normal selfie wouldn't. So really sort of trying to go deep in yourself and listen to that and take inspiration from there is a really good starting point to come up with some ideas and concepts. Moving on to number two, which is to build a character. So in a story, there is always usually a character, and I find that really helpful way to, again, go about the self-portrait, especially if you're somebody who feels a little awkward going in front of the camera, sort of thinking of it as being an actress or, somebody who steps into a role. That helps so much with the pressure and just makes it so much more fun and playful to go about your self-portrait. And in this character building, another thing that really helps is to be mindful about the outfit and clothes you use. So when you're building their character, an outfit and what you wear can help so much. I often really get inspired by the clothes and outfits that I wear because they immediately sort of tell a story in themselves. So that's really, if you're struggling to come up with maybe some ideas, those things like what you wear physically can really help, and how they make you feel. And here really thinking about like colors and textures. I just think they are a really sort of easy way to come up with some ideas and just get that sort of creative mumble going. And the last one is to use your imagination. In a creative self-portrait, you can really go wild and express a fantasy, and maybe again think of yourself as a character in a movie or a book. I really love to think about it quite cinematically, so the location and where you are, that all tells that story, and again maybe shows a unique side of you because it's you who are creating all of that, so you get to express something maybe in a more personal way. I think here it really helps also to try to find connections that maybe aren't obvious, and everything's already been done when it comes to creative stuff, but then it really comes down to execution, details, and how you connect things, and trying to find maybe unexpected things to combine. Alright, moving on to part number two, which is going to be some practical tips on how you can look your best in your selfies. The first tip is the angle of your camera. So really how you place your camera in relation to yourself as the model has a huge impact on, firstly, what kind of story it tells, and secondly, just how you look in the photo. So there are many different tips and many different sort of ways to go about this, but usually I try to, when I come to a place and then I set up my camera, and then it's really about experimenting and taking time with this. sometimes really what makes or breaks a photo, if you think like you take the first photo and it just looks really bad and you think like, oh my god, I don't look good at all, it can usually be just the angle of your camera. By even changing that quite slightly, it can have a massive difference. I've lately been experimenting with this kind of high fashion photography, and they usually take the photos from quite down below, and what that helps is to elongate the body so you look taller, and then also sort of the body parts that are closer to the camera will look again longer and, well, bigger I guess as well, but like longer. So if you're going for that kind of confidence pose, placing your camera quite low is a good tip. If you're going for a vulnerable vibe and something that is quite intimate, placing your camera sort of a little bit up above can really get that intimate feeling and somehow a kind of personal touch to it. A pretty fail-proof angle I've noticed to take is quite straightforward. Usually that is sort of a pretty standard one and usually works out pretty well. And one tip, if you're taking your photos with the iPhone, really trying to make it as straight as possible, sort of in relation to yourself, will make a huge difference and will just make it look better. Moving on to the next one, which is probably the most important one, posing. So this one is something I struggle with so much. I do not consider myself being a very photogenic person. Actually, I'm very awkward in front of the camera, but I have found some tips and tricks to make myself just look better in photos. So I want to share those with you. So let's again look at some photos, some examples, and analyze the poses in them. All right, so let's start with this one. So again, this one is taken from down below, and as you can see, there's like a little bit of a twist going on in my body, and I have put quite a lot of tension in my muscles. So like number one is to really, you know, suck in that belly, and if you're feeling sort of a little bit uncomfortable and tense, usually that's actually a good thing, because what you don't want to be in a self-portrait is sort of like very sort of like hunched together, unless that's the sort of vibe you're going for. One thing that I found really helpful when posing photos is to put some movement in my poses. So instead of just standing there statically, and especially if you're standing like just straight to the camera, that often creates like sort of a short and maybe not so confident vibe, which again, sometimes I really like that because it also has that, you know, like those old kind of photos where people would just pose like really stiffly. Sometimes I really like that. But if you want to have sort of a more dynamic vibe in your photo, like putting some movement in your body and doing like a little bit of a twisty movement, and then, you know, sucking in your belly and just having like good core support. So in that photo that we looked at previously, you can see I have like a little bit of a twist in my body, and I'm even like using my legs, so I'm sort of tensing my legs to get that sort of muscle. So I'm sort of pressing down into the ground with my foot to get that like muscle to pop. And again, like with your limbs and your hands, it's a good idea to not have them like really tight to your body, but actually putting them like away from your body, and that will again elongate and just make it look better. So an example which I don't think the pose is so great is this one, and this one is taken like from straight forward, which is like a pretty difficult one to nail and to look good in. Although I do have my hands like they're sort of up, so that creates some air in it at least. But yeah, like the outfit is not a great choice, and I just don't think I look like it's not super flattering in this one. Another one which is also not so good is this one that is taken up above. Here I think you can see this area around my hip, which in a way, like, I mean, you have to love your body and be body confident and all that, but still, I don't know, this doesn't make me especially happy when I look at it. So I think the way I could have saved this is if I would have sort of lifted my leg up higher from the ground, so it wouldn't all just be like against the ground. So if you struggle with posing in your photos, having movement, and maybe if you can put your camera on that it takes like many, like really quickly, that's a really good tip, so that you can sort of move about and the camera is just like taking frames, and then in one of those you'll probably find one that is really nice. Okay, so the next one is the face. So in a self-portrait, obviously, usually your face in it, and this is honestly, I think, the trickiest bit. I have a very animated face, and it just will not like sort of shut up when I take a photo. So one way is to, you know, just like maybe show a profile of your face or even take it from behind. Like that's totally fine, and then could still tell like a very strong story. And sometimes even removing the face, I think, can make the viewer sort of empathize with the photo more, because then you're not so sort of stuck on the face, but more about the story. If you do have your face in the shot, trying to be sort of relaxed, like around the jaw and also the eyes, is a good technique. And one trick I actually learned recently that models quite often do is like you have to, like you push your chin a little bit forward and down, and for some reason like that just makes it look better. I think it's because like it elongates the back of your neck. So in this photo I am doing this chin trick, and as you can see, even though it's sort of like from straight forward and it's sort of a tricky angle, I don't know, I think my neck looks pretty nice and I look pretty sort of graceful in the photo. Another trick is also really just to play around with like sort of tilting your head in many different ways. So for example, in this one you can see like my head, like it's actually pointing that way, but then my eyes are looking towards the camera, and I think that creates this sort of little playful and mischievous look, and it's just quite flattering. Let's see if I can find one where I don't look so great. Okay, so this one is, it's not the worst, but I think the raised eyebrows and sort of the full-on smirk, it's kind of cute. But maybe if I would do this again, I would tone it down, try to relax my eyebrows a little bit more. And also, I don't know, I feel like I've done something with the editing that I look like really weirdly orange. Also, one thing, if you're struggling really with your face and you don't know what to do with it, like using a prop can really help save that, so you have something to do and sort of a purpose, so you're not like super self-conscious about everything that's going around in your face. The next one is light. So as in all photography, light is really crucial, and if you're indoors, try to find the spot where there's the most light. So usually that's next to a window, and when you're going to take your creative self-portrait, it's a good idea to stand to the window so that the light hits you from the side, because that creates really nice sort of kind of dynamic vibe in the photo. If you're sort of straight to the light, that can become pretty flat. And the same is if you do top-down photos, so try to place your whole composition in a way where the light comes from the side. Again, because if it's from the top, everything can just look a little flat and a little strange. So if at all possible, try to find where the window is and then like place everything so the light comes from the side. If you're shooting your creative self-portrait outdoors, try to be mindful of the time of day you go out. So the sort of trickiest one is to do it when the light is really bright, and because that creates like really harsh shadows, which usually doesn't look super good, or then it's like a lot of hassle like in the editing phase to try to make that look good. So instead try to go out, you know, maybe in the evening or in the morning when the light is really soft and nice. And yeah, there again, like obviously sort of the mood you're going for will dictate this a lot, but usually golden hour is really good, it creates like really magical vibes. Alright, that were all my tips for you this time. I hope you found some inspiration and some use in these. As with everything, it's really about practice, and sometimes it really feels like really sticky and difficult to get a self-portrait that you feel good about, but it's definitely worth it. And again, if you can put your artistic spin on it, it just makes the whole process so much more fun and so much more rewarding, because you're really taking the selfie game up a notch. Thank you so much for watching this. If you liked it, maybe you want to give a thumbs up, maybe you want to do the subscribey thing. Also come hang out at Instagram. I'm over at Kika. I have more of my photos there. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna go home and eat now because I am super hungry. All right, see you next time. Bye.